Morton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to just start with a gentle reminder, if it's needed, that Labour promised in their manifesto not to raise national insurance. And yet we're here today because Labour broke this promise. And we're here today because right honourable members in the other place put down some very important amendments to this bill, which now, rightly, are here for us to consider. Let's also not forget it's Labour colleagues who voted against protecting small family businesses, against protecting hospices, against protecting GPs, against protecting care providers, against protecting small charities, including air ambulances, against protecting providers of school transport for children with SEND, and against protecting nurseries. Now they all face the job tax.
Come on, Right Honourable Friend Lamb.
Of course.
Grateful to my Right Honourable Friend. My Right Honourable Friend will recall that in his speech earlier, the Honourable Member for Loughborough referred to perverse incentives. Is it not perverse that this government should, while exempting the health service, be taxing doctors and dentists and hospices and children's hospices, which are all part, effectively, of that same health service?
My honourable friend is absolutely spot on, and I find it hard to believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we're listening to these arguments being made from the other side. I mean, the unintended consequences coming from these choices from the Labour government are not just disappointing, but they are so callous. They are so harsh on some of the most vulnerable communities and vulnerable people in society.
And lady give way?
I will briefly.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady for giving way. She's making some excellent points, but does she agree with me that it also shows a deep lack of understanding from the party opposite of the way that our communities are constructed and the organisations that we rely on so much to keep them going?
And Madam Deputy Speaker, this is exactly the point. And what we see instead is the benches opposite just continuing to blame this on their economic inheritance, and it's simply not the case. And I just want to quickly quote the chair of the OBR, who said, nothing in the OBR's review was a legitimisation of that 22.6 billion. And I actually do wonder at times what the former Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, makes of all this. And it was he who, in the run-up to the 2024 general election, of course, came out endorsing Labour. But what so many now see is a government that just doesn't really understand the role that so many charities play in supporting the NHS, communities, older people, young people, families and patients, people who are sick and often terminally ill. For example, why would you protect the public sector and the rest of the NHS from this national insurance tax, but not general practice? And an analysis from the Institute of GP Management estimates that on average it will cost each practice £20,000 a year. How many staff hours is that equivalent to? How many hours of a GP or a practice nurse's time is that? And on charities, I've spoken to a number of local charities. We've heard from others here today. Every pound that this Labour government squeezes out of them through the jobs tax is an extra pound that can't be spent on frontline services. It's an extra pound that they have to find just to stand still. I just find it so hard to believe that this Labour government is also taxing those who provide vital hospice care. How can they talk of helping palliative care with one hand when clobbering hospices and care providers with extra taxes with their other hand? And then on business. But of course, you know, I can be cynical at times, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I see a complete lack of business expertise, knowledge or experience from the opposite benches. And just visiting businesses is not enough to understand how a business operates. I speak to them in my constituency on a weekly basis. The chair of the CBI has said business has been milked as the cash cow. You simply cannot expect small businesses, or indeed any business, to just be squeezed and squeezed, thinking, well, they'll just increase their costs and pass them on to the end user, because the end user can't afford them, as we've heard this afternoon. Something, ultimately, will have to give. And that's hours, it's training, it's development, and its jobs. We're in this chamber listening to and debating the government's welfare reform. At its heart, I really believe and want to see people getting back into work. They need support for that, Madam Deputy Speaker, but they also need employers, businesses, to have vacancies to be able to support them back into work too. And what I see with this legislation, like others, is taxing business. You are taxing them out of creating the vital jobs that this country so needs to get the growth which we haven't got at this moment in time. So I think the benches opposite, as I mentioned earlier, are somewhat threadbare, giving the appearance that the government doesn't care. I know, and we've heard people on the other side of this chamber who do care, like we care on this side. I would just start to draw my comments to a conclusion by saying that I would urge members in this chamber on the opposite benches and listening outside to reflect very, very carefully. Tonight, we all have the opportunity to do the right thing, to protect, to help charities, hospices, and by virtue of that, some of the most vulnerable in our country and in our society. We have an opportunity to protect jobs and help businesses create opportunities. By virtue of that, we have the opportunity to help working people, people who aspire and hope for a better life. So I just end quite simply by urging the opposition benches, please think again and